The cardboard boxes stacked against my living room wall looked like tombstones marking the end of my marriage. I sat on the floor, leaning against the cold radiator, holding the final divorce decree in one hand and my phone in the other. The time read 3:47 p.m., exactly 1 hour since Judge Morrison's gavel ended 22 years of what I once thought was love. My phone buzzed. Veronica's name appeared on the screen. Against my better judgment, I opened the message. Hope you're enjoying your pathetic studio apartment. Theo Rowland just moved his grand piano into your old music room. The mover said it's worth more than you make in 5 years. Oh, and we're turning your practice space into his cigar lounge for someone who actually matters. Another buzz. This time, a photo. Rowland standing in my old home office, his Harvard diploma hanging where my grandfather Eugene's war medals used to be. His smug expression looked less like a smile and more like a predator studying its prey. Then another text. You'll die poor and alone, just like your grandfather. At least he had his secrets to keep him company. What do you have? A violin and delusions of talent? I nearly threw my phone against the wall when it suddenly rang. Not a text, but a call. The caller ID showed no number, just a string of zeros ending with a single one. I stared at it through 5 rings before my thumb moved on its own. Theodore Eugene Brennan, I answered. The voice that followed was calm, crisp, and precise, every word measured. Mr. Brennan, this is Colonel James Whitmore from the Pentagon's Estate Recovery Division. I need you to listen carefully. Your grandfather, Staff Sergeant Eugene Brennan, completed a classified operation in Cambodia in 1964, codenamed Night Music. My grandfather was a supply sergeant in Vietnam. I replied automatically, repeating the family story I'd heard countless times. He played piano in officers' clubs. That was his cover, the colonel said. He was actually a cryptography specialist with the 5th Special Forces Group. The mission remained classified for 60 years. That classification expired at midnight. I stood, unsteady. What are you talking about? Your grandfather recovered something in the Cambodian jungle, something of significant value. He never claimed his compensation because of the mission's secrecy. With accrued interest and inflation, that amount is now worth approximately $156 million. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. I scrambled to pick it up. That's impossible. My grandfather died in a state-run nursing home. My parents took out a second mortgage to pay for it. Staff Sergeant Brennan made a choice, Whitmore replied. He stayed silent to protect his family and his country. But he made provisions. The funds can only be released to his direct descendant under specific conditions. What conditions? I asked. You must come to Washington immediately. There's a Delta flight leaving O'Hare in 3 hours. A first-class ticket under your name has been purchased. Seat 14I, window. Your grandfather specified that detail himself. How did you even know to call me today, right after my divorce? There was a pause. Your grandfather's instructions were very specific. We were to contact you on the day you lost everything. His exact words were, when my grandson has nothing left to lose, give him everything I couldn't claim. He's been dead for 35 years, I said quietly. How could he possibly know? Eugene Brennan knew many things, Mr. Brennan. His ability to predict patterns made him invaluable to military intelligence. The question is, are you ready to learn what he knew? The clock started when I made this call. You have 72 hours to finish what your grandfather began. Otherwise, the entire inheritance will transfer to the Department of Defense. Through the window, I could see Lake Michigan, gray and restless, like my grandfather's eyes when he drifted into memories he never spoke of. Veronica's words echoed in my mind about dying poor and alone, and Roland's smug face flashed before me. Colonel Whitmore, I asked, what exactly did my grandfather find in that jungle? The answer to that question is worth $156 million, he said. I'll see you at the Pentagon tomorrow at 0800 hours. Bring your grandfather's journal, the one with the musical compositions. You do still have it, don't you? My gaze shifted to the one box I'd refused to let Veronica touch, the one labeled Grandpa Eugene's things in my mother's handwriting. Yes, I said. Good. One more thing, Mr. Brennan. Your ex-wife's new companion, Roland Ashford, his grandfather, William Ashford, was a defense contractor in 1964. This isn't coincidence. Nothing about your situation is. Your grandfather foresaw this decades ago. A line went dead. I stood in the silence of my empty apartment, surrounded by the remains of my broken marriage, holding a phone that had just connected me to a past I never knew existed. Outside, Chicago's skyline stretched toward a darkening sky. Somewhere among those towers, Veronica was celebrating her new life with a man whose family might be linked to secrets my grandfather died protecting. I turned to the box of my grandfather's belongings and pulled out his worn leather journal. Its yellowed pages were filled with musical notations I'd played since childhood. For the first time, I noticed something I had never seen before. Small markings in the margin of the first page, written in pencil, so faint I had to hold it to the light, were 5 words. For Theodore, when everything ends. 3 months before that call changed my life, I was standing on stage at Symphony Center, drawing the final notes of Brahms's concerto in D major from my violin. The crowd erupted, 2,000 people on their feet, but in the third row, Veronica sat motionless, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She wasn't clapping. That should have been my first warning. By 47, my life had settled into a predictable rhythm. I woke every morning at 6 in our Lake Forest home, practiced scales in my soundproof studio, while Veronica did yoga on the terrace overlooking the pool. The house stretched across 2 acres of carefully designed luxury, every room a reflection of her taste and my income. We bought it 15 years earlier, when I was promoted to first chair violin with the Chicago Symphony. Back then, she still came to my performances, still meant it when she said she loved the way my hands moved across the strings. At our housewarming, my mother, Patricia, had run her hands across the marble countertops and said, "Your grandfather would be so proud. Eugene always said music would take you places he never could." Grandpa Eugene had been gone 12 years by then, but his presence lingered like a melody you can't forget. My father, Douglas, kept a photo of him on the mantel, a young man in uniform with sharp eyes and a quiet intensity. Beside it sat his bronze star, though none of us knew what he'd done to earn it. He came back from Vietnam different, my father would say after his 3rd beer at family dinners. Spent 6 months in Cambodia before his official deployment. Never talked about it. Just played that piano like he was trying to drown something out. I'd inherited Eugene's musical gift, but took it down a different path. He'd played jazz in smoky bars, all improvisation and instinct. I chose classical music, structure, precision, every note deliberate and safe. Veronica loved that about me when we met at a charity gala 23 years ago. "You're not like these other men," she'd whispered, her breath warm against my ear as we danced. "They think money is music. You create something that lasts." She worked for a small interior design firm back then, ambitious, determined, wearing a borrowed dress and imitation pearls that somehow made her more captivating. I was 32, she was 29, and when she looked at me, I felt untouchable. Our marriage thrived for the first decade. As my career advanced, she redesigned each home we lived in, every one more refined than the last. When we bought the Lake Forest house, she stopped working, saying she wanted to focus on making our life beautiful. I practiced 6 hours daily, performed 3 nights a week, and taught at Northwestern on weekends. We talked about having children, but there was always something in the way, a concert tour, a renovation, a next big step that never arrived. The change came gradually, like a violin slipping out of tune. Veronica joined the country club, started lunching with women whose husbands owned investment firms and tech companies. She'd come home, chatting about vacation homes in Aspen, yachts on Lake Geneva, private jets to Art Basel. "Did you know Roland Ashford just bought a Basque painting for $23 million? She said one evening, scrolling through her phone. That name, Roland Ashford, would later unravel everything. He'd hired Veronica to redesign his Lincoln Park penthouse, a job she accepted without asking me. "It's just one project," she said. "His money spends the same as anyone's." But it didn't. His money came with attention, flattery, and comparisons that made me feel smaller each day. Roland was 6'2" to my 5'9", Harvard MBA to my Juilliard degree. He'd earned $40 million the previous year. I'd barely cleared $300,000. At a dinner party we couldn't avoid, he smiled and said, "Your husband's quite accomplished, Veronica. It must be fascinating living with an artist." The way he said artist made it sound like a quaint hobby. Veronica laughed, a bright, genuine sound I hadn't heard in months, and something in me tightened. That was 6 months ago. The spring Vienna tour should have been a triumph. 3 weeks performing with the Vienna Philharmonic, but instead, it became the final movement of my marriage. While I played Mozart in the music verein, Veronica was playing house in Roland's penthouse. The truth came at 2 a.m. Vienna time. My nephew James called, his face pale on my phone screen. "Uncle Theo, I need to tell you something," he said, voice cracking like he was a boy again. "I saw Aunt Veronica at Mr. Ashford's building tonight." "She's redesigning his office space," I replied, setting down my violin. It was midnight, he said. The building was dark except the penthouse. They were on the balcony and they weren't looking at fabric samples. They were kissing. He hesitated. Her dress wasn't completely on. "I'm sorry. I took photos. I didn't think you'd believe me otherwise." Seconds later, the images appeared. Veronica pressed against the glass railing, Roland's hands tangled in her hair, a red dress half unzipped, the Chicago skyline glittering behind them like a cruel celebration. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. When she texted me that she was going to bed early with a headache, I believed her. That night, I performed flawlessly, every note executed with precision, while my mind replayed those images. The Austrian critics called it technically perfect but emotionally empty, which felt appropriate for a man realizing his life was built on lies. The confrontation came 3 days after I returned to Chicago. Veronica was in the kitchen, humming Vivaldi's Spring, and wearing diamond earrings I didn't recognize. "Nice earrings," I said, setting down my violin case. "Thank you," she replied. "They were a bonus from the Ashford project." "Some project," I said evenly, working past midnight, earning jewelry. Her face shifted through surprise, calculation, defiance, and finally cold certainty. "You know, James saw you," I said. "He works in Roland's building. Or did you forget about family while undressing for your client?" She set her cup down calmly. "I'm not going to insult you by denying it." "How generous," I replied. "You want me to apologize? Fine. I'm sorry you found out this way, but I'm not sorry it happened." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "Do you know what it's like, being married to someone who loves dead composers more than living people? You spend 6 hours a day with your violin, Theo. Roland spends that time building empires." "I'm a musician. It's who I am. It's what you loved about me." I was 29. I thought passion for art meant passion for life. But you don't live, Theo. You just perform. Even our marriage became a recital, the same movements repeated endlessly. Roland shows me the world. Last week, we flew to Monaco for lunch. "For lunch? You threw away 22 years for that?" "No," she said. "I threw it away for someone who makes me feel alive." You want to know the difference between you and Roland? When he walks into a room, people notice. When you do, they may admire your talent, but no one fears you. No one needs you. No one's life changes because Theodore Brennan exists. Except yours, I said. My money changed your life plenty. She laughed, sharp and bitter. Your money? Theo, Roland makes your yearly income in a week. That house you're so proud of? His wine cellar is worth more. You're a relic, playing relics for other relics. The world moved on, and you're still on stage performing music by men who've been dead for centuries. Her divorce lawyer was her father's golf partner. Under Illinois law, the non-working spouse, especially one who had sacrificed her career, held the advantage. The papers were filed before I could fully process it. She wanted the house, half my retirement accounts, alimony, and the maintenance of her lifestyle. You'll keep your violin, her lawyer said, and one vehicle. Mrs. Brennan is being quite reasonable. ... My mother cried when I told her. That woman never deserved you, she said. My father was more practical. Eugene lost everything too, he reminded me. Came back from the war to find his wife sold the family farm and vanished. He rebuilt from nothing and died with nothing. He died with dignity, I said. Sometimes, my father replied, that's all a man can keep. The Pentagon rose from the Virginia landscape, its limestone walls glowing in the morning sun. I'd taken the reed-eye from Chicago, my grandfather's journal wrapped in a towel inside my backpack, too valuable to risk in checked luggage. The Uber driver, a veteran, gave a low whistle when I told him my destination. Pentagon at dawn. You military? My grandfather was Staff Sergeant Eugene Brennan. Must have been something special to get you a summons there, he said. If only he knew. I'd spent the flight reading and rereading Eugene's journal, noticing patterns I'd never seen before. The compositions weren't random. Each was dated, and the dates matched military operations in Southeast Asia. But the margins held the real secrets, tiny markings that looked like musical dynamics, but didn't fit any known notation. Colonel James Whitmore met me at security. His uniform was perfectly pressed, and his presence demanded posture. Mr. Brennan, thank you for coming, he said, shaking my hand firmly. Before we continue, I need to verify your identity beyond documents. Tell me about your grandfather's piano. It was a 1947 Baldwin Spinet, mahogany finish, I replied. He bought it from a pawn shop in Raleigh after the war. There was a cigarette burn on middle C from the previous owner. Whitmore nodded. And what did he call his Sunday night performances at the veterans' home? Church for the unchurched, I said, smiling faintly. He said music was the only religion that never lied. Follow me, the colonel said. We descended 3 levels underground, passing through multiple checkpoints. Finally, we entered a windowless room illuminated by fluorescent lights, a metal table between us holding several boxes. Your grandfather's real service record, Whitmore said, opening one. What you're about to see has been classified beyond top secret. Even now, some details remain redacted. Inside were photographs. Eugene young and alert in jungle fatigues, standing beside a unit of men whose faces were blacked out. Behind them lay the wreckage of a small aircraft. Operation Night Music, February 1964, Whitmore explained. His unit was sent into Cambodia to investigate a crashed Soviet reconnaissance plane. Officially, there were no Soviets in Cambodia, and officially we weren't there either. What did they find? I asked. The plane carried an early computer system, a prototype for encoding nuclear launch sequences. But that wasn't the real discovery. The pilot, Victor Clove, survived the crash. He was dying, but conscious. Whitmore explained that my grandfather had spoken enough Russian to communicate with the dying pilot, Clove. He pulled out a heavily redacted transcript, still readable in parts, and said Clove had shared information about Swiss bank accounts used to pay double agents, including account numbers and passwords. Then Whitmore showed me a photograph of Eugene, holding a metal briefcase. My grandfather had memorized everything before turning it over to command. He could have claimed $22 million in 1964, an amount unimaginable today, but he never did. Doing so would have exposed a classified operation and risked lives. Instead, he chose silence, hiding the information through coded references in his music. Though the Pentagon owed him compensation, Eugene refused to claim it, fearing it would endanger his family. Now, decades later, the classification period had expired. With accrued interest and military penalty multipliers, the owed sum had reached $156 million. But Eugene had left specific conditions. Whitmore handed me a sealed envelope addressed in my grandfather's shaky handwriting. It was to be opened only by his grandson, and only after losing everything material but being ready to gain something essential, Inside were 3 handwritten pages. Theodore, if you're reading this, your marriage has ended, and you've lost what you once valued. I know this because history repeats itself. You love fully, and that makes you vulnerable. The music I left behind contains more than notes. Each piece encodes coordinates. Each rhythm change, a number sequence. In Baltimore, Storage Unit 447 holds what I could neither destroy nor claim. The Pentagon funds are rightfully yours. But what's in Baltimore demands a choice between truth and comfort. The Swiss accounts still exist, cleansed by time but born in corruption. Names tied to those accounts built fortunes from war. One of them will matter to you personally. You have 72 hours from Whitmore's call to act. Ignore it, and everything reverts to defense. Pursue it, and you'll have the power to expose injustice or protect a convenient lie. Choose carefully. Truth, like music, endures. The Baltimore storage building appeared deserted, its brick walls stained with age and graffiti. Yet the keypad worked when I entered the code hidden in the third movement of Eugene's Autumn Fugue, 1964028, his mission date and service number. Unit 447 was at the far end of a dim corridor that smelled of metal and dust. Inside, a single green filing cabinet stood against the wall, with a chess set arranged mid-game on top. I recognized it instantly, the Budapest Gambit. The gambit means sacrifice, Eugene once said. You give up something material to gain position. The cabinet's top drawer held a key to a safety deposit box at Baltimore First National Bank and a leather folder filled with documents that made my hands tremble. Photocopies of Swiss bank statements from 1964 to 1970 revealed payments from American defense contractors to Soviet intelligence. The sums were vast, but the names were worse. Ashford Industries appeared 17 times. William Ashford, Roland's grandfather, had sold defective helicopter parts to the U.S. Army while secretly funding Soviet operations in Cambodia. Soldiers died in crashes caused by failures Ashford knew about. The profit margin, 43%. The blood money, $22 million. Then my phone rang. The caller ID was unknown, but the voice was unmistakable. Mr. Brennan, this is Roland Ashford. I hear you. My grandfather understood that war is business. Yours stole government property. He documented the truth, I replied. Truth, Roland said, is whatever powerful people decide it is. Here's my offer. Take the Pentagon payout and disappear. Leave Baltimore, leave those files, and you'll have more money than you can spend. Or continue this crusade and learn what real loss means. You're threatening me. I'm offering the same choice your grandfather faced: silence and safety. Or truth and consequence. He chose silence. Be smarter. The line went dead. Standing in that storage unit, holding evidence of crimes that had shaped an empire, I made my choice. I called my cousin Dennis, an investigative journalist. Clear your schedule, I told him. I have the story that will define your career. The Baltimore First National Vault opened slowly, its thick door moving like a stage curtain. Inside the box were originals of everything from the storage unit and more. Reel-to-reel tapes labeled Clave Confession and a second ledger tracing the movement of the Swiss funds after 1970. The trail showed that Roland's father inherited the accounts, and Roland himself took control in 2010. At the bottom of the box lay one last item, a handwritten sheet of music titled Redemption Suite. When I hummed its melody, I realized it wasn't just music, it was a cipher. The composition itself encoded the passwords to every account Eugene had ever uncovered. My grandfather hadn't only documented the crimes, he'd kept access to the money itself. Over the next 24 hours, Dennis and I worked with a team of forensic accountants from his newspaper. The Swiss banks confirmed the accounts were real and still active, totaling $87 million. Legally clean now, but built on death. We publish tomorrow, Dennis said. This will take down Ashford Industries. And Veronica, too. She tied her future to Roland. You sure you want this? I thought of Eugene, who stayed silent to protect his family. And then of the soldiers whose names appeared on those casualty lists. Young men who died because William Ashford valued profit over lives. No second thoughts, I said. But we do this carefully. We release the historical records first. Let the public see the truth themselves. And the Swiss funds don't go to me. They go into a trust for the families of soldiers who died in those crashes from 1964 to 1970. Every cent. Dennis smiled. Your grandfather would be proud. Maybe, I replied. Or maybe he'd think I was a fool for choosing truth over safety. What do you think he'd say? I looked at Eugene's handwritten sheet music, at the notations marking tragedies he couldn't stop but refused to erase. He'd say the music was worth playing, even if no one was ready to hear it. The Washington Post ran Dennis's story on a Tuesday morning under the headline, Blood Money. How defense contractor fraud funded enemy operations in Vietnam. By noon, Ashford Industries stock had dropped 40%. By day's end, Roland faced federal investigations for inherited fraud and tax evasion tied to unreported Swiss accounts. I watched the coverage from my new office, a renovated brownstone in Lincoln Park, the headquarters of the Eugene Brennan Foundation for Veterans Families. The Pentagon payment had cleared a week earlier, all $156 million of it, legally mine. Still, I couldn't stop thinking of those crash reports and the faces of 19-year-old soldiers who never made it home because someone's greed outweighed their worth. Veronica called 17 times that day. I answered on the 18th. Theo, Roland's been arrested. The FBI took everything. The house, the accounts, even my car. They're calling it proceeds of criminal activity. I have nothing. You have what you chose, I said. I made a mistake. Roland used me just like his grandfather used those soldiers. I'm staying in my sister's basement in Kennerville. Me, in a basement. What do you want from me, Veronica? I want to come home. That house isn't yours anymore. The bank foreclosed after Roland's assets were frozen. I bought it at auction. You bought our house? I bought a house. My Uncle Bernard and Aunt Dolores live there now. They lost theirs to medical debt. It seemed like a better use of the space than Roland's cigar lounge. She began crying, raw, unguarded sobs that once would have undone me. What am I supposed to do? She asked. The same thing I did. Start over. The difference is you chose your ending. Mine was chosen for me. 6 months later, I performed Redemption Suite at Symphony Center, the composition Eugene wrote but never shared publicly. The audience didn't know they were listening to encrypted Swiss account passwords turned into melody, tragedy transformed into art. My mother sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face during the adagio, which carried the names of every soldier who died in an Ashford-supplied helicopter. By then, the trust had distributed over $12 million to Gold Star families. Dennis received a Pulitzer for his investigation. Ashford Industries went bankrupt under the weight of lawsuits. Roland was sentenced to 7 years for tax evasion, the only charge that could be proven for inherited crimes. Veronica eventually married her divorce lawyer, a practical choice that suited her better than love ever had. My sister Monica once asked if I regretted any of it. Which part, I said. Exposing Roland or losing Veronica? Both. I couldn't stay silent. Eugene didn't have that choice. In 1964, he buried the truth like seeds, waiting for the right season. I was just the one who inherited the soil. The real inheritance wasn't the money, though it changed my life. It was understanding that Eugene's silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. He'd prepared the board for a game that took 6 decades to finish, waiting for someone to make the moves he couldn't. I live simply now, in a 2-bedroom condo within walking distance of Symphony Hall. I still practice 6 hours a day, but I also teach free music lessons to veterans' children on weekends. The foundation now funds music therapy in VA hospitals. using Eugene's compositions to help soldiers heal from what he once understood but couldn't speak about. Sometimes I play in nursing homes, ending every performance with Moonlight Serenade in Eugene's altered rhythm. Most never notice the Morse code woven into the notes. But once, an old veteran looked up sharply and whispered, "Night music. You know about night music." "My grandfather knew," I said. "He made sure someone would remember." The truth about inheritance isn't found in wealth. It's in the stories we protect, the choices we make, and the courage to face difficult truths even when our hands shake. Eugene left me more than fortune. He left proof that justice, however delayed, always finds its rhythm, encoded in time, waiting for someone to play the right notes at the right moment. And when that moment came, it was worth everything I'd lost to reach it. If you enjoyed this story, please like and share it with someone who values tales of justice and family legacy. Comment below if you've ever uncovered a hidden truth about your own family. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories where truth finally emerges from the shadows.